sorry you're sick.
I'm not sick.
I'm sick.
He called in sick.
I can assure you he is truly a very sick boy.
What?
Well, the numbers are in, and Germany is the sick ban of Europe. No, really, I mean that literally. Germany has officially been crowned the world champions in sick leave. According to a survey by the DAK, a public health insurer in Germany, workers took an average of 20 sick days per insured individual in 2024. But lost days due to illness don't just harm the patient, but also give the economy the chills as well. According to some economists, had German workers taken the same number of sick days last year as they did in 2019, it would have given the economy a 1% boost in GDP, enough to avoid the recession. Have we all become slackers? Ran the headline from the Tagesspiegel. Are we all lazy or simply finished? The tabloid Bild asked, while the Handelsblatt lamented of, quote, the sick republic. According to these headlines, Germans are becoming sicker and taking more and longer periods away from work when they're ill. But is it true? And why? Well, let's take a look. But before we dive into how many people are sick, I think it's important to take a look at how much our government's spending on sickness and health benefits. And where exactly does Germany stack up in all of this? Well, good news, guys, we're first again. Germany ranks first in the European Union, attributing 11% of its GDP to sick leave and public medical care. It's followed by France and the Netherlands, both at 10.2%, according to the EU Statistical Office, Eurostat. The EU countries that allocate the least to sickness and health benefits are Estonia, Lithuania, Poland, Hungary, and Ireland. And according to 2020 figures, Germany is also the country that spends the most on sick leave benefits, specifically. The country allocates 2.3% of its GDP to sick employees. It's followed by the Netherlands, Sweden, Spain, and Luxembourg. Now, the 2020 rankings were, of course, likely impacted by the pandemic. But if we do take a look back at the 2018 figures, those countries with the highest expenditures were largely the same, except for Spain, which at that time didn't quite spend as much. Now, you might presume that countries that spend the most money per GDP on sick leave are also the countries that take the most time away from work sick. Well, the thing is, we don't actually know that. The truth is, anyone out there who claims to have compiled a complete list on the average number of sick days taken by people in a particular country is probably lying to you. The truth is, it's really, really difficult to make that calculation, and nobody's been able to do it perfectly. It is extraordinarily difficult, if not impossible, to calculate this due to differences in regulations. And depending on the statistics used, you're going to get different conclusions. By way of illustration, a recent report by Die Statis, the German Federal Statistical Office, in 2023 reported that employees in Germany were sick an average of 15.1 working days. This is a substantial 4-day increase compared to 2021, which is notable. But it's also important to point out that German people are able to take up to 3 consecutive days off of work without a physician's note. And this particular statistic only includes the days off of work which were reported to the health insurance companies. So even by their own admission, that figure is an underestimation. So for example, if you were sick 2 days twice per year, those 4 days extra that you took off in sick leave wouldn't be accounted for in those statistics. But beyond that, it's also really important to point out that not everybody works 100% of the time. There are many part-time or seasonal workers that also do kind of skew the data when it comes to reporting of sick leave. If a part-time worker is sick, this can't count as much as sickness absence for a full-time employee, and the same applies to someone on partial sick leave. The way to correct this is to convert everything into what statisticians call lost work days. But not every country or reporting entity does it this way. But putting all of those caveats aside, there are studies out there that do seem to indicate that people across Europe are getting sicker and for longer periods of time. For example, this study by the World Health Organization on absenteeism from work due to illness in Europe does show a gradual increase over time. But beyond differences in how we report these statistics, different cultural or generational factors can also have a major impact on how many sick days an employee takes, with some employees tending to take more sick days than others. For example, there have been numerous reports around the globe, from Australia to the United Kingdom to Germany and the United States, that Gen Z workers take the most amount of sick leave, which is really interesting, especially one report that found that Gen Z workers are nearly twice as likely to call in sick than baby boomers, despite being much younger and arguably therefore less likely to suffer from chronic illnesses that come with age. But maybe this isn't so surprising given what I think probably the long-term effects are going to be of the pandemic and general attitudes about taking sick leave. Since 2020, a lot of countries have expanded their sick leave policies, and I can see why Gen Z, whose professional career thus far has largely overlapped with the pandemic, would be more accustomed to more robust sick leave policies. But, beyond this potential link between age of workforce and sick leave, I think a lot of these kind of studies fail to capture presenteeism, where employees still come into work even when they're ill, which can also significantly impact productivity and health transmission in the workplace. I've personally found that in German work culture, there really is this high value of health and well-being of the entire office, and a much stronger emphasis on the fact that employees need to stay home when they're sick. And so, again, this is my experience, but I do find that whether you are significantly ill or even just mildly suffering from a cold or cough, you're more likely to stay home and rest and recover than American employees. Because, in my experience, that's not at all what happens in American culture. Now, this is an extremely old statistic, but way back in 1998, one study estimated that a quarter of all employed males work during an illness episode.
Did you see the memo about this? Yeah.
But personally, as an American, I think that 25% is a gross underestimate, because I think this happens all the time and maybe even is becoming more and more prevalent as more companies really have shifted to this PTO, or paid time off model, which basically lumps together both sick leave and vacation leave all into one pool of hours. And also, I think it's probably becoming a lot more prevalent because we are also living in a society that has more and more full-time to working parent families. Workers in the USA are not typically given additional time off when their kids are sick. So if you're a full-time working parent and you need to take time off to care for your child, you do so at the expense of precious days off. So my own family members, for example, we've had lots of discussions about concerns over PTO, because if you have a couple of kids, you take off a significant amount of time when they're sick, that takes away the time that you have off to go on maybe a short family vacation or take time off during the holidays to spend time with family. So if you're running low on time, you're probably just going to go to work sick. But it really does, I think, beg the question that, are Germans really somehow sicker than French workers or Dutch workers or Italian workers? Is there some kind of plague that's befalling the German workers that doesn't seem to affect other people? Or is there something else going on behind the scenes that's really impacting all of these statistics? Well, it's the start of a new year, and like a lot of you, I've made a New Year's resolution to build a better me in 2025. Long before this YouTube channel, the 2 kids, and the move to Germany, I used to be a long-distance multi-sport athlete, competing in everything from ultramarathons to full triathlons. But life happens, and especially with raising little kids, it was tough to find the time or energy to work on my fitness and health. But I'm making a commitment that this year, I'll regain a piece of myself and my love for running. And beyond logging my early morning miles, a big part of this journey has been dialing in my nutrition to make sure that my body has the nutrients it needs to go the extra mile. So I've started integrating AG1 into my morning routine because it helps to fill in my nutrient gaps and with muscle recovery, thanks to antioxidants vitamin A, E, and calcium. And I really have noticed a difference. I have more energy, and I think it's great that I can get all of my essential vitamins and minerals in a supplement that's easy to take and tastes great too. Plus, I've been having some fun mixing it up and adding AG1 into my morning breakfast smoothie. They even have recipes on their website, so be sure to check those out. And when you take AG1, you can feel good knowing that their product is Colonalista certified, an independent third-party certification that tests supplements for over 500 substances, ensuring purity, potency, and safety for athletes. And because you support my channel and watch my videos, I have a special offer that I can share with my community that's worth 69 euros. At drinkag1.com/type Ashton, you can now get the welcome kit, 10 practical travel packs for on the go, and a bottle of vitamin D3 plus K2 for free when you take out a monthly subscription. There's no contract period. You can pause or cancel at any time, and it's risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. To take advantage of this offer, simply click the link down below in the description of this box, or simply scan the QR code on your screen to sign up today. Well, perhaps the most interesting thing about the rising number of sick days isn't the number of days, but the illnesses cited for taking them. According to research reported by HR Lab, the common cold was the primary cause of high levels of sickness absence in 2023, such as influenza infections and bronchitis. According to the Robert Koch Institute, the respiratory virus RSV infections are currently high on the list, especially amongst young children. This is an acute respiratory tract illness that usually requires hospital treatment. There was already an RSV wave last autumn, leading to partial overloads in clinics and hospitals across Germany. And high cases of mental health and musculoskeletal issues were also reported, which could possibly link back to Germany's current labor shortage, resulting in higher stress levels and burnout. And these secondary and tertiary reasons for people taking sick leave, I think, is really interesting because of just how intertwined they really can be, of how work can make you sick and being sick can negatively impact your work. And keep in mind again that current trends in sick leave in Germany are actually higher now than during the peak of the pandemic. Mental health has been an increasing cause for concern for many years, but the last 3 years have been really challenging for people. Between market inflation and the cost of living crisis, once you also tack on a heavy workload, you're primed for a stress-related absence. So I do personally find some of these initial reports as saying that, Germans are just lazy as quite flippant. Sure, a glance at current OECD labor figures can be startling. In 2022, the average American worked over 1,800 hours per year, while the average German worked only 1,340 hours. But again, these statistics, independently looked at and examined within a vacuum, don't tell the full story. For example, yes, Germany does have a very high female ratio in the workforce compared to other European countries. But when looking at the number of hours worked on a national level, especially when you compare countries like Germany to the United States, well, these statistics fail to account for the fact that in Germany, again, unlike the United States, here, every second woman works half-time, which mathematically lowers the average number of hours worked per employee. Like me, for example, I'm a part-time worker, and so I contribute to the lowering of that overall national average. And again, context matters because I personally live in a very conservative part of Germany. And I have shared plenty of times on my channel that especially where I live, you cannot have 2 full-time working parents unless you have outside help from grandparents or privately hired nannies. The vast majority of daycare centers and kindergartens are only open for half of the day. If you're lucky, you can find a full-time spot, but they're still only open till like 4 o'clock, which does not align with the traditional 8 to 5 corporate working hours. or account for commuting. But I don't want to dive too far down that rabbit hole because I think that's a different discussion for another day. But I do bring it up because I think it is really important to understand how context shapes a lot of these statistics around working hours and illnesses and the reasons why people might be taking that sickness leave in the first place. Plus, I do think people are probably feeling more work-related stress and more work-related burnout, which of course makes them more likely to take off time from work. What I don't think is happening is that somehow the entire country of Germany is playing a game of hooky.
I can appreciate how this time of year children are prone to taking the day off. However, in Ferris's case, I can assure you he is truly a very sick boy.
Never had one lesson.
But that being said, all of these reasons for taking time off of work, I think, are super fascinating from a socio-cultural level, because I think it tells us a lot about prevailing attitudes on work-life balance and how healthcare does impact workplace productivity. But, while researching for this video and reading all these salacious headlines about how Germans are just being so sick and lazy, I found myself wondering, but hasn't there been something that's happened recently that also might have impacted the statistics in Germany? Yeah, there was. So the Center for European Economic Research in Mannheim gives the disclaimer. Severe waves of colds did play a role, as did a more conscious approach to respiratory diseases after the pandemic. But the biggest culprit for the rise in the number of sick days in Germany? Improved absence recording via the Electronic Certificate of Incapacity for Work, the digital successor to the yellow slip, so to speak. According to a press release, the head of their research unit is quoted as saying, "The tracking of days of incapacity for work has much improved since January 22. Actually, the increase in sick days is largely explained by the fact that sick notes are now recorded electronically." So, there you have it, everybody. Germans did not simply become sicker or more lazy overnight. They just finally learned to embrace the internet. Finally.
Well, it's very hip to be on the internet right now.
Can you explain what internet is?
But, I still think, nonetheless, this is a really interesting topic because, again, it touches so much on work-life balance and the role that I think public healthcare and attitudes towards general healthcare spending in general affect workplace productivity. And I think it would be really, really interesting to hear from all of you about what you've personally noticed about differences in sick leave in your neck of the woods, so to speak, in your industry or in your home country. Have you felt like there's been a change in the way that people approach sick leave? Are they more likely to take it now and be maybe a little bit more conscious about the effects that respiratory illnesses have on the coworkers at large in the office? I think that's a really interesting thing to talk about. So I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section of this video. And as always, if you enjoyed what you saw today, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And for more content from Type Ashton, hit that subscribe button. So I'll see you next Sunday. Cheers!